We live in a world that worships visibility. To be constantly present, endlessly available, and perpetually visible has become the modern demand. Yet, history whispers a paradox. It is not the one who is always in the room who shapes destiny, but the one whose absence carries weight, whose silence speaks louder than noise, and whose presence, though scarce, creates lasting transformation. True power does not lie in scattering ourselves everywhere, but in concentrating ourselves in the few places, moments, and relationships where our essence has the greatest impact. Scarcity is not weakness, it is strength refined. It is through rare presence that we achieve significance. Let us now uncover what you accomplish when your presence is scarce. We instinctively understand that what is rare, what is scarce, becomes valuable in ways that the abundant can never be. From the dawn of civilization, human beings have cherished what they could not easily possess. Gold and diamonds did not earn their worth because they were useful, but because they were rare. A masterpiece painted by the hand of genius is not measured by the pigments on the canvas, but by the scarcity of such vision that cannot be replicated. And just as this law of scarcity governs the world of material things, so too does it govern the realm of the soul. The same principle applies to your presence. When you allow yourself to be everywhere, at every moment, endlessly available to all, your presence dissolves into the background like air, necessary, yes, but invisible, forgotten, and taken for granted. Yet, when you withdraw, when you become scarce, your presence begins to draw weight and power. People notice when you arrive, they lean forward when you speak, and they carry your words long after you have departed. Presence, like gold, grows luminous when it is rare. Consider the example of a teacher. Imagine the one who delivers long lectures every day, speaking endlessly until words pile upon words, each lesson blurring into the next. Students may sit in the room, their ears filled, but their hearts remain untouched, and then imagine another teacher who rarely interrupts the rhythm of daily instruction. But when he does, he speaks with such clarity, such intensity, that the room falls into silence. His few words strike with the precision of an arrow, remembered, repeated, and carried by his students long after they leave the classroom. The first teacher was abundant in presence, but forgettable in impact. The second, by his scarcity, became unforgettable. What we offer constantly loses its sharpness, just as a blade used without pause grows dull. Your presence is not infinite. It is not inexhaustible. It is your duty to guard it, to allocate it wisely, to offer it where it matters most. To do otherwise is to allow your essence to be diluted until there is nothing left but fatigue and emptiness. By limiting your presence, you do not diminish its value, you heighten it. This truth is not only psychological but spiritual. Human beings crave mystery, and mystery is born of scarcity. If you are always seen, always heard, always available, there is no mystery left in you, no depth to discover. Mystery awakens imagination. It allows others to reflect on your absence, to wonder about your thoughts, to anticipate your return. The lover who is not always present ignites a longing far stronger than the one who never departs. The leader who chooses silence at times moves the hearts of followers more deeply than the one who fills every hour with noise. Scarcity does not mean neglect, nor does it mean withholding love or attention. It means bringing the fullness of your being to fewer moments so that those moments become sacred. A word spoken sparingly can transform a life. A glance, a touch, a moment of undivided presence, when rare, carries a weight that 1,000 careless gestures cannot. Think of the people you have lost in life, perhaps a parent, a grandparent, or a dear friend. Do you remember every hour you spent with them? No. You remember fragments, flashes of presence, a story told at the kitchen table, a walk in the rain, a moment of silence when you felt understood without a word being spoken. Their presence may not have been constant, but its scarcity sharpened memory. It is not abundance that makes these moments eternal. It is their rarity. This law of scarcity also protects the soul from waste. If you pour yourself endlessly into every request, every demand, every trivial call for your attention, you deplete yourself. You become like a river that spills into 1,000 shallow channels until its waters evaporate. But if you withdraw, if you discipline yourself to be scarce, your waters gather into a deep and powerful stream, capable of moving mountains. Scarcity is not absence, it is concentration. It is the choice to direct your being toward what matters most. In the modern world, where constant presence is celebrated, this truth is nearly forgotten. Technology demands we be everywhere at once, responding to messages instantly, showing our lives daily, proving our existence by constant visibility. But this abundance of presence often leaves us hollow. It strips our interactions of depth, leaving us spread thin, exhausted, and easily dismissed. Scarcity restores dignity to presence. It teaches others, and ourselves, that our time, our attention, our essence are sacred, and not to be wasted. There is also a deeper alchemy at work. When your presence is scarce, it awakens in others the recognition of their own soul. They cannot lean endlessly upon you, so they are forced to stand, to think, to grow in your absence. A parent who hovers constantly robs a child of independence, while the one who is present sparingly but meaningfully cultivates resilience and character. Scarcity calls forth strength in those around you. It teaches them to cherish the moments they do receive and to grow in the silence when you are gone. You will find that scarcity, when practiced with intention, not only transforms how others perceive you, but also how you perceive yourself. By withdrawing from excess, you begin to notice the quality of your own presence. You discover what moments deserve the fullness of your being and which do not. You move away from living reactively, scattered and drained, and toward living deliberately, concentrated and powerful. Scarcity reveals to you that your presence is not ordinary. It is an energy, a force, a living symbol that affects those around you in ways far deeper than you may realize. And once you see this, you begin to treat your presence as something sacred, not to be squandered in noise, but to be reserved for moments of truth, of love, of transformation. To live this way requires courage. For scarcity will sometimes be misunderstood. People may ask, why are you not always here? Why do you not give more of yourself? And yet, if you remain faithful to this path, they will come to see that your rarity was not rejection but reverence. They will come to feel that when you are with them, you are truly with them, and that is worth infinitely more than constant, diluted presence. So let your presence be like fire in the hearth, warm, illuminating, unforgettable. Not scattered sparks that die upon the wind, but a flame tended carefully, offered only when it is needed, so that it may bring true light to the darkness. For in the end, it is not abundance of presence that leaves its mark on the soul, but scarcity that carries weight, sharpens memory, and transforms ordinary moments into treasures that endure. Respect is one of the deepest currencies of human life. It cannot be purchased, it cannot be demanded, and it cannot be forged through appearances. Respect emerges as a natural consequence of how we carry ourselves, how we set boundaries, and how we teach others to treat us. When your presence is abundant, when you are endlessly available, when you respond to every request and stretch yourself to meet every demand, you might imagine that you are earning respect. But what you often cultivate instead is expectation. The more you say yes, the more your sacrifices are assumed and the more invisible you become. Paradoxically, it is through scarcity, through the careful guarding of your time and your attention, that respect is shaped and preserved. When your presence is scarce, people begin to realize that your energy is not something they can take for granted. They learn that your attention is not a bottomless resource to be consumed whenever they please, but a sacred offering given only with intention. This very act of drawing boundaries communicates self-respect, and self-respect always compels others to follow. If you do not hold your own time as precious, no one else will. If you do not protect your presence, others will not hesitate to exploit it. Scarcity is not withdrawal, it is a statement of dignity. Think of the friend who is always there, always available, always eager to meet any need or request. At first, they may be appreciated, but over time their constant presence becomes predictable. Their sacrifices become part of the background noise of life. When they say yes, it is no longer a gift, but an expectation. Their presence loses its meaning because it has no boundaries. And then think of another friend, one who offers their time with intention, who appears when it truly matters, who says yes when the heart of the moment demands it. That friend is remembered. Their presence is not forgotten, for it is not given cheaply. It is treasured precisely because it is rare. Scarcity shapes respect because it forces others to pause. It teaches them that they cannot assume your involvement. They must earn it. It makes them reflect on the weight of what they are asking, and in that reflection, they begin to value not only your time, but also their own. In this way, your scarcity is not selfish. It becomes a mirror in which others confront the worth of their own choices. Your boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are sacred thresholds that demand mindfulness. This principle unfolds in every domain of life. In work, the colleague who volunteers for everything soon finds themselves overlooked because they have diluted their strength into every task, no matter how trivial. Their abundance is mistaken for mediocrity. Meanwhile, the colleague who chooses carefully, who commits to fewer tasks but executes them with excellence, commands respect. Their scarcity heightens the weight of their contribution. In relationships, the partner who never says no, who erases their own needs for the sake of another, does not earn deeper love. They often invite indifference. But the partner who honors their own boundaries, who refuses to lose themselves, becomes worthy of admiration because their self-respect commands it. In the wider community, those who speak constantly are ignored, while those who speak rarely but with truth are remembered. Scarcity shapes respect because respect is born from recognition. Recognition cannot flourish in excess. When something is endlessly available, it loses its shape in the human psyche. We cease to notice it. We stop holding it with reverence. The sun rises every day, and though it is the source of life, how rarely do we pause to honor it? But when the sky darkens with an eclipse, when for a few moments the sun is hidden, we stand in awe, realizing the power of what we take for granted. So too is it with your presence. Constant abundance breeds forgetfulness. Scarcity awakens recognition. At its core, this law of scarcity and respect touches on the deeper question of boundaries. To set boundaries is to declare, I am not infinite. My time, my attention, my soul are precious, and they cannot be wasted. This declaration is not arrogance, it is truth. Those who live without boundaries often imagine they are practicing humility, but in truth they are undermining their own dignity. To allow oneself to be endlessly consumed is to teach others that you are disposable. To preserve yourself, to offer yourself sparingly and intentionally, is to teach others that you are sacred. Even in spiritual traditions, the pattern is clear. Think of prophets, teachers and sages who did not dwell constantly among the crowds, but withdrew into silence, into the wilderness, into solitude. Their absence created reverence for their return. Their scarcity of presence amplified their presence. It was precisely because they did not pour themselves out without measure that their words carried such weight. If they had been endlessly available, endlessly talking, endlessly giving, their voices would have dissolved into background noise. Instead, their scarcity demanded respect, and their respect commanded transformation. This truth is not confined to history, it is alive in your own life. Imagine a leader in your workplace who attends every meeting, comments on every detail, involves themselves in every conversation. Their constant presence creates irritation more than inspiration. Their abundance erodes their authority. Now imagine another leader who attends sparingly, but when they enter the room, they carry stillness and gravitas. Their words are chosen with precision. Their silence is not absence but weight. That leader commands respect without asking for it. Their scarcity magnifies their authority. Respect born from scarcity is not rooted in fear nor in distance. It is rooted in authenticity. When you are scarce, you are not withholding yourself out of selfishness. You are aligning your presence with truth. You are showing up where your presence matters, where it transforms, where it leaves an imprint. You are not scattering yourself into places where your absence would go unnoticed anyway. By doing this, you invite others to honor the same truth in themselves. It is important to recognize that scarcity is not about playing games with others. It is not about withholding affection as a form of manipulation. True scarcity emerges from inner alignment, from the knowledge that your time, your energy, and your presence cannot be endlessly multiplied. It is about choosing depth over breadth, intention over impulse, and when you live this way, respect flows naturally because others sense the authenticity of your boundaries. Scarcity teaches the world how to treat you. If you show up at every moment, for every request, at every beckoning call, you teach others that you are always available, that you exist to meet their demands. But if you preserve yourself, if you guard your time and attention as sacred, you teach others that you are not to be squandered. You teach them to approach you with reverence, with mindfulness, with sincerity, and when respect is shaped in this way, relationships are transformed, interactions deepen, words are weighed more carefully, encounters become meaningful. Your presence, though scarce, becomes a mirror in which others glimpse their own capacity for respect for you and for themselves, and it is in this mutual recognition, born of scarcity, that human connection achieves its truest dignity. Connection is one of the deepest needs of the human soul. We long to belong, to be seen, to be understood, and to be held in the hearts of others. Yet the strange paradox of life is that connection does not grow stronger in abundance. It deepens in scarcity. When your presence is constant, endlessly woven into the fabric of another's life, it risks becoming background noise. But when you step away, when your presence is withheld by time, distance, or choice, something unexpected happens. Anticipation awakens, longing takes root, and the moments of reunion are magnified into experiences of profound meaning. Scarcity does not diminish connection, it distills it, intensifies it, and raises it into something sacred. Consider the story of a parent who must leave their home to work abroad. To the child, the absence is painful, a wound carried through days of waiting. Yet when the parent returns, even if only for a brief visit, the moments they share glow with an unforgettable quality. A trip to the park, a bedtime story, a simple meal together. These are not ordinary hours. They are treasured, stored deep within memory, and carried into adulthood as proof of love. Though the parent's presence is scarce, the bond becomes strangely deeper, because the child has learned to value every second, to hold it with both hands, to never let it slip away unnoticed. Scarcity creates an intensity that abundance cannot provide. The same principle operates in all human relationships. If you are always present, if your words and gestures are endlessly repeated, their weight diminishes. The ear grows dull to constant sound. The eye grows blind to what is always in view. But when you withdraw, when you allow space to exist between encounters, you create anticipation. And anticipation is a force that heightens perception. It sharpens the senses. It turns the simplest gestures into symbols of immense value. A letter received after months of silence, a phone call from someone long absent, a smile after weeks apart. These moments pierce the heart precisely because they are rare. Scarcity transforms interactions into sacred encounters. When presence is not diluted by excess, every word matters. Every gesture carries meaning. Silence itself becomes eloquent. Think of lovers parted by distance. The days they spend apart are filled with longing, but when they reunite, time seems to stop. A single touch is enough to dissolve the weeks of waiting. A single conversation feels like a feast after famine. Their connection is deepened not because they were constantly together, but because they endured the ache of absence and discovered the intensity of return. Even in ordinary life, this truth reveals itself. Imagine a friend you see every day, someone who is always around, sharing countless hours. The familiarity may bring comfort, but the memories blur together. Now think of another friend you rarely see, perhaps once a year. Yet when you do meet, the conversation flows effortlessly, and you leave with a sense that the encounter mattered. You remember the words, the laughter, the shared silences, because they are not swallowed by repetition. The scarcity of their presence makes your connection feel luminous, carved into the heart rather than scattered across countless forgettable days. What scarcity teaches us is that the soul craves not quantity, but quality. We imagine that to connect we must give endlessly, pouring ourselves out in constant availability. But in truth, the human spirit grows weary of what is abundant. It ceases to notice what is always there. Scarcity disrupts this blindness. It awakens us. It forces us to notice, to savor, to hold the fleeting moment as though it were eternal. The depth of connection lies not in how often we are present, but in how fully we inhabit the moments we choose to give. This law of scarcity is not about absence for its own sake, nor about withholding affection. It is about intention. When you limit your presence, you create space for others to long for you, to remember you, to prepare themselves to meet you with fullness. Scarcity sharpens appreciation. It makes people realize that your presence is not ordinary, that it is not to be wasted or overlooked. And in turn, it teaches you to bring the whole of yourself to those rare moments, so that they carry an imprint that lingers long after you are gone. There is a hidden wisdom here. Too much closeness without pause can suffocate. Too much presence without distance can erode the very bond it was meant to strengthen. Lovers who cling constantly may grow weary of one another. Parents who hover endlessly may smother their children's independence. Friends who demand constant attention may wear down the very fabric of the friendship. But scarcity introduces breath into the relationship. It gives space for individuality, for longing, for the sweetness of return. It preserves the mystery and keeps the bond alive. Think of music. A song is not made only of sound, but of silence. It is the pauses between the notes that give the melody shape, that allow the beauty of each tone to be heard. If sound were constant, unbroken, the music would dissolve into noise. In the same way, connection needs absence as much as presence. The space between encounters is not emptiness. It is the silence that gives meaning to the notes of togetherness. Scarcity deepens connection because it introduces rhythm, contrast, and harmony. In a world obsessed with constant connection, where messages fly endlessly, where presence is demanded at all times, it may seem counterintuitive to step back, to allow scarcity. Yet it is precisely in this modern overabundance that true connection is often lost. When every hour is filled with chatter, when every moment is documented, when every presence is demanded, nothing feels sacred anymore. Scarcity reawakens the sacred. It restores weight to words, depth to gestures, and mystery to relationships. When you allow your presence to be scarce, you invite others into a deeper way of relating. You invite them to listen more closely, to treasure more fully, to anticipate more eagerly. You create encounters that are remembered not for their length, but for their intensity. You turn ordinary moments into rituals of connection. You become not just a person in their life, but a symbol, a presence that carries meaning far beyond the time you spend together. The deepest bonds in life are not measured by constant proximity, but by the depth of recognition in fleeting encounters. A brief conversation with someone who sees you truly can transform you more than years spent with someone who only half notices you. Scarcity allows this recognition to shine. It pulls away the fog of overfamiliarity and forces us to meet one another with fresh eyes, as though for the first time. And it is often in those rare, scarce moments that souls truly touch. So when you withdraw, do not think of it as absence. Think of it as creating space for presence to be magnified. Do not fear that scarcity will weaken your bonds. Trust instead that it will deepen them. For every word, every gesture, every moment, when rare, carries the power to echo in the heart long after the moment has passed. Scarcity does not break connection. It sanctifies it. There is within every human being a deep well of energy, a flame of vitality that fuels our thoughts, our creations, and the unfolding of our destiny. Yet this energy is not infinite. It is not a river without end, flowing freely no matter how recklessly we draw from it. It is a sacred resource, delicate and powerful, meant to be preserved for the highest callings of the soul. And yet many live as though this well can never run dry. They scatter themselves across endless tasks, endless obligations, endless appearances, until they are emptied, exhausted, and estranged from their own purpose. Being everywhere drains us, for the soul cannot expand when it is fragmented into 1,000 small pieces. But when your presence is scarce, when you guard your time and your energy, you begin to gather yourself inward, directing your strength toward that which truly matters. Scarcity becomes not deprivation, but conservation, the discipline of aligning your being with your highest calling. Modern life tempts us to believe that productivity lies in constant activity. We are told to fill our calendars, to say yes to every opportunity, to stretch ourselves into every corner of demand. But in truth, this endless dispersal erodes not only our energy, but our sense of meaning. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. To say yes to everything is to stand for nothing. True focus emerges not from abundance, but from scarcity. It is not what you add to your life, but what you remove, that shapes your destiny. Even research into human productivity confirms this truth. Studies show that individuals who guard their focus, who say no to the majority of demands, accomplish more meaningful work than those who attempt to satisfy every request. The myth of multitasking collapses under the weight of evidence. Depth is sacrificed for breadth, and excellence for mediocrity. Steve Jobs, a man whose life's work reshaped the very tools through which we live, once said that focus is not about saying yes to what matters, but saying no to the 100 other things that do not. This is the essence of scarcity, not emptiness, but refinement. It is the conscious refusal to allow your energy to be squandered on what does not serve your higher purpose. Think of your energy as a flame. If you place that flame into too many torches, it grows weak, a faint glow barely illuminating the darkness. But if you preserve it, if you concentrate it, it becomes a fire capable of igniting transformation. To live with scarce presence is to live with intention, to recognize that your energy is not meant to be poured into every demand, but to be harnessed for creation, vision, and the work that will outlast you. There are countless examples in daily life of how scarcity preserves power. Consider the artist. If she spends her days scattered in trivial errands, her brush will never touch the canvas with conviction. But when she withdraws, when she guards her presence from distraction, she channels her energy into the one act that aligns with her calling, creation. Or think of the leader who attends every meeting, answers every question, fills every silence with noise. Such a leader drains themselves, and their influence weakens with time. But the leader who chooses sparingly, who appears only when the moment requires, preserves their energy. When they do speak, their words cut through the noise like thunder, carrying weight precisely because they are rare. Even in personal life, the same principle applies. A parent who exhausts themselves trying to be everywhere at once soon burns out, unable to offer the depth of presence their child truly needs. But a parent who is intentional with their energy, who withdraws from the unnecessary in order to be fully present in the essential, creates moments that shape the soul of a child forever. Scarcity is not neglect. It is the wisdom of knowing where to give oneself wholly, and where to remain silent, still, and unseen. The tragedy of those who scatter themselves is not only that they lose energy, it is that they lose themselves. In giving away their time indiscriminately, they forget what their soul was truly called to do. They live in reaction to the demands of others, never pausing long enough to ask the deeper question, what is my higher calling? What am I here to accomplish, not for approval, not for noise, but for the quiet unfolding of truth within me? Scarcity creates the space in which such questions can be asked, and it preserves the energy required to answer them. There is a rhythm to the soul, a cadence between action and withdrawal, between presence and absence. When you live always outward, always scattering, you lose touch with this rhythm. But when you practice scarcity, you begin to hear it again. In the silence of saying no, in the withdrawal from distraction, you feel the deeper pulse of life guiding you toward what is essential. Your energy is gathered, your purpose clarified, and your path illuminated. Scarcity is therefore not merely a strategy for efficiency, it is a spiritual discipline. It is the practice of honoring your own energy as sacred, of refusing to cheapen it by scattering it into places unworthy of its depth. It is to see your presence as a vessel of power, meant not for constant consumption, but for moments of creation, vision, and transformation. Scarcity teaches you to live not as a servant to every demand, but as a steward of your own destiny. And when you live this way, others begin to sense it. They feel the difference between the one who is drained, stretched thin, worn down by excess, and the one who is whole, concentrated, and alive with inner strength. They feel that your presence, though scarce, carries vitality. They realize that when you give yourself, you give fully, because you have preserved the energy to do so. And in this, you not only transform your own life, you become a beacon for others, a living reminder that the soul was not created to be everywhere, but to be precisely where it matters most. So when you practice scarcity, you are not withdrawing from life. You are aligning yourself with life's deeper rhythm. You are conserving your flame so that it may burn brighter, not weaker. You are saying no to the trivial so that you may say yes to the eternal. You are preserving your energy not for dispersion, but for creation, for vision, for transformation, for the callings that only you can fulfill. The ultimate accomplishment of scarce presence is the creation of legacy. A legacy is not formed through constant exposure or endless appearances. It is born in the depth of impression one leaves upon the hearts and minds of others. A life scattered across every demand and diluted by perpetual availability rarely imprints itself upon history or memory, but a life lived with intention, a presence offered sparingly yet with depth, carves itself into the soul of the world. Scarcity is not only a discipline for the present moment, it is the seed of permanence. It is the shaping of something that outlasts the individual, something that continues to breathe even when the body has grown silent. Think of the great spiritual teachers, philosophers, and leaders of humanity. Many of them did not live long lives, nor did they flood the world with constant words or appearances. Some walked briefly among their people, speaking rarely, acting sparingly, and yet their scarcity amplified their voice. Their absence became a testament to their presence. Their names echo through centuries not because they lingered endlessly, but because they gave themselves in rare moments that touched eternity. Their teachings, their silence, their gestures carried such concentrated depth that generations continue to feel their presence long after their departure. The scarcity of their presence made them timeless. This principle applies not only to the great figures of history, but to the ordinary lives we live each day. Legacy is not the privilege of the extraordinary few. It is the natural consequence of how we choose to be present. A parent who fills every moment with endless chatter and constant busyness may be remembered with fondness, but often the details blur. Meanwhile, a parent who appears with deep intentionality, who chooses moments of genuine connection, who speaks words of guidance at just the right time, who offers silence that allows the child to grow, leaves a legacy that outlives them. Their scarcity transforms into lasting influence. When your presence is scarce, people continue to feel you even when you are not physically there. You live on in the echoes of their thoughts, in the way your words shaped their choices, in the way your example molded their character. Scarcity creates memory because it creates intensity. Abundance fades into forgetfulness. Scarcity imprints itself on the soul. Think of the one who encouraged you once at a time of despair. They may not have walked with you every day, but their presence in that critical moment remains with you even now. That is legacy, the carrying of presence beyond its physical limits. Legacy is not built upon the volume of life, but upon its weight. One may live 80 years in endless busyness and leave little behind, while another may live 30 years with rare, powerful presence and echo through centuries. The length of life is less important than the intensity of its offering. Scarcity concentrates meaning. It ensures that when you give yourself, you do so in ways that matter, in ways that endure, in ways that cannot be forgotten. This is why scarcity is not to be feared. Many resist it, believing that to withdraw, to appear less often, to be selective with their presence, is to risk being forgotten. But the opposite is true. The constant presence is forgotten because it blends into the fabric of daily life. The scarce presence is remembered because it stands out, because it interrupts the ordinary with significance. Scarcity leaves a legacy precisely because it creates contrast. It draws a line in the memory, a moment that does not fade. We see this even in the natural world. The rare comet that streaks across the night sky is spoken of for years, while the stars that shine constantly are rarely mentioned. The first flower that blooms after a long winter is cherished, though countless flowers may come afterward. It is not abundance that shapes memory, but rarity. Scarcity burns itself into consciousness, and in so doing it transcends time. Legacy, then, is not about doing more, but about being more deliberate. It is about recognizing that your presence carries weight, and that each moment you give can either dissolve into the ordinary or crystallize into something eternal. Scarcity ensures crystallization. It ensures that what you give is not squandered but treasured, and when it is treasured, it continues to live long after you have left. In relationships, this truth is particularly profound. The loved one who has passed away does not live on in our memory through every mundane interaction, but through a handful of sacred moments. We remember the way they looked at us in silence, the single sentence they spoke that shifted our perspective, the rare embrace that carried the weight of unspoken love. These are scarce moments, and yet they form the legacy of connection. We carry them like talismans, revisiting them again and again, proof that presence need not be constant to be eternal. Scarcity also grants a form of immortality. To be scarce in presence is to allow absence itself to become pregnant with meaning. You are no longer bound to the moment of encounter. You extend beyond it. People hear your words when you are not speaking. They feel your presence when you are not there. They act differently because of what you once offered them. This is how a life transcends itself. This is how a human being becomes more than a fleeting appearance in time. They become an echo, a symbol, a living force that continues to act through the lives they touch. And so, scarcity leaves behind not emptiness but resonance. It leaves behind not silence but a melody that continues to play in the hearts of others. It leaves behind not absence but a presence so deeply woven into memory that it cannot be erased. This is legacy, and legacy is not created by those who scatter themselves thin, but by those who choose to be scarce, who give themselves in moments of depth rather than in endless abundance. To live this way requires courage. It requires the strength to resist the temptation of constant visibility, the discipline to withdraw when the moment does not require you, the wisdom to know that what matters is not how often you are seen, but how deeply you are felt. It is a quieter path, but a more enduring one, for those who live in constant presence may be remembered for a time, but those whose presence was scarce and sacred are remembered for generations. When you live with this understanding, you no longer measure your worth by how often you appear or how loudly you are heard. You begin to measure it by the depth of the impressions you leave, by the echoes that continue long after your voice has grown silent. You realize that to live is not merely to exist in the eyes of others, but to plant something within them that continues to grow when you are gone. You do not merely live, you echo, and in that echo you become timeless. My friends, abundance of presence may win you attention, but scarcity of presence will earn you reverence. By being scarce, you create value, shape respect, deepen connections, preserve energy for higher purposes, and ultimately leave behind a legacy. So do not fear being absent from where noise reigns. Instead, seek to be present where your soul is truly needed, for it is not in the quantity of appearances that life is measured, but in the quality of the impressions you leave behind. When your presence is scarce, you do not diminish, you multiply. You become not merely someone who passes through life, but someone whose presence reshapes it.